So we wanted to follow up because Ring, Ring and Amazon have announced that they are pulling the plug on their flock safety integration after the Super Bowl ad flopped pretty badly last week. It triggered a social media firestorm about surveillance and ICE access and like what it means for them to be able to see things when you haven't approve that, or you have to opt out if you don't want them to do that, even though the partnership never went live. But I think it what goes to show that these are things that companies need to be paying attention to. What is happening in the culture and what people are talking about that your brand can be associated with. How you're going to like promote your product in a way that doesn't give people creepy and scary vibes about the things that they're already afraid of. And I think Ring has kind of been like towing that line a little, too closely. And this kind of pushed them over the edge. And I think that image that really stuck out to people was the one with like the blue like circles expanding outwards of like what people could see. And then obviously the number about only, finding 365 dogs and like what that trade-off means for you as a user. So Trishla, I know that you saw this because you were covering the Super Bowl commercials, but would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Amazon is kind of reading the room here, right?
Mhm.
Although they did not point to the Super Bowl ad backlash for ending the deal. But what it tells us about people is that I think they're hyper vigilant and hypersensitive to anything when it comes to surveillance. I could totally understand why people find this invasive. I think recently you might have seen the friend necklace that was doing the rounds
Mhm.
in New York City, and I think
Yep.
they also ran that campaign maybe in LA, maybe in Paris. It's funny because it's like everywhere, most of the people had the same reaction. This is surveillance capitalism or what have you. Um, and people, I think, are a lot more aware of how their data is being used. And especially when it involves law enforcement, it can get uncomfortable really fast.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I guess this feels like a preemptive move, not because the product doesn't work, but because the perception of it is kind of like becoming risky. And I guess in today's economy, perception is everything. You can have the best tech,
Yes.
but if it feels creepy, it's going to be a brand problem. And I think Amazon perhaps gauge that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of Facebook announcing that their glasses are going to start, doing the recording and then helping give you information for people, right? And I saw, kind of split views, right? There were some people in tech that are like, oh my God, this would be so great. Like, there's a lot of people that come up to me and I want to know who they are. And this would be a great way for me to pretend that I do know. And then you had, similar reactions to this. It was like, Google Glass, right? Where it's like if someone starts like recording me, I'm going to punch them in the face, right? So it really does seem as if there's this view of like people and like privacy, like they're thinking about it a lot more. They're considering like what it means to be filmed or to be, you know, in somebody else's view, right?
Mhm.
And this came on the legs of them saying that they're putting it in right now because there's so many other things happening that they think it's going to go under the radar, and it kind of has, right? Because not many people have heard about it, but we'll see what happens if it does go forward, right? But I do think that companies, particularly companies that do, deal with like surveillance and like, privacy issues, start thinking about that, right? I mean, we're also seeing the craziness that's happening with like Discord having to do age verification and people questioning like whether it's necessary to be uploading your ID and other biometric details in order to be on a chat platform, right?
Mhm.
Whereas like the company is saying, "Oh, we're doing this because, what's happening with children and with teenagers." But the way that they're kind of putting it in is making people feel as if you're, you want all our information because of your association with Peter Thiel's, company, so that you have all our information. And then, they also announced yesterday that the government has been sending letters to tech companies to get information from us, right? Famously, right now, like Anthropic has been pushing back, and we have Secretary of War Pete Hegseth saying that. They're gonna put them on, like, the, do not use list, basically,
Mhm.
so they're not gonna use it, and it also means that other people that have government contract, contracts can't use them either. And that's because they're fighting, back, which, makes me question, well, so none of the other companies are fighting back. All the other companies are just giving them our information. So there's a lot going on in this space right now. But it is something that these companies have to like, be aware of like the cultural moment and like where they fit, because everyone's going to be paying attention to their relationships with other companies like this, and then with the government, and what they do to push back or not, on all the information and like privacy details that they get from their users.
Yeah. So I did see, a lot of people, especially in social media platforms, kind of applauding Anthropic for taking a solid stance on this. I
Hmm.
mean, if you just look at the way privacy and privacy laws have evolved in this country, I mean, and it's kind of like, as a tech company, you're gonna flirt with the boundaries as much as you
Hmm.
can. Let's see how much we can like gather and get data and do what you
Hmm.
have to do, until like I guess the regulators or the lawmakers are like, okay, I think we're gonna draw a line here because this is clearly deceptive. But by then,
Hmm.
you've seen historically how that's a little too late.
Yeah, well, we'll see what kind of, goes on there. But a thing to remember is that this may not be the next administration either, right? And will things change at that point? And will your customer and like user flip from there? And how are you going to be able to come back from
Mhm.
that if you did give in this time around?